we're talking about Bed-Stuy that has a lot of business owners. I'm actually wearing a sweatshirt from a Bed-Stuy company, Zoom University. And there's another anxiety there of when will we be able to get back to work? When can we turn the lights on for businesses? Where do you stand there, and or what are your thoughts when it comes to timing for Brooklyn to be back to Brooklyn?
You know, I'm going to say health first all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
But if here's the horrible statistic. If tomorrow everything was clear and we could go back to work and businesses could go back to operating, 51% of MWBEs wouldn't be able to open their doors. If tomorrow.
Wow.
So we're going to lose potentially. And that's partially because the first federal stimulus package, which was $249 billion, never touched Fulton Street. And then the Senate Dems went back and got $500 billion, and that won't touch Fulton Street. So the help that's necessary, the resources that are necessary, the businesses that have leveraged everything from their 401k. I know businesses that have leveraged their 401k, sold their homes, done everything to be contributors and entrepreneurs in this city and in this borough, and specifically in this district, will not be able to come back to business because they don't own their buildings. The deferred payments don't seem to apply to Black businesses. Like this is what I'm saying. Like this is the obvious inequities in our country as it relates to Blacks, because businesses we have businesses who their bank records have demonstrated that they're solvent as businesses. Those businesses aren't even getting help. They have reserves. So now we're going to do what we normally do, which is lean on our family members, and in some instances and some of those will stay because of that, because we got these other networks that don't show up in 500 companies and don't show up on a balance sheet. So some of us are going to pull through simply because we know what a susu is, right? So, so that doesn't show up. So I am hopeful that number that they project, which is 51%, won't be that high, because when we get in a crunch, we know what to do. We go to the neighbor, we do susus, we do all kinds of different things to keep
We lean on our communities,
Our community, and I think our community is prepared to help some of those businesses. So the 51% number, I don't think for Bed-Stuy is going to happen, because we got great businesses in Bed-Stuy. I tout that all the time. And those businesses generally get a community bailout. So they won't get stimulus money, but they'll get a community bailout. But I don't want to just say that that's what I'm relying on. We know that the Community Reinvestment Act is a tool that we can use for lending at 2%. So some businesses will benefit from that. That's what I'm pushing. I'm saying to the federal government, we know that check that you wrote, we're not going to see, but we don't need that check. What we need is for you to just work within the framework of the Community Reinvestment Act, which was designed to underwrite loans residentially and commercially in challenged communities. So you or I, who may not have the best credit through the Community Reinvestment Act, can get a bank to lend to us. And that's what I'm pushing hard on. Senator Sanders and I are working on some stuff. Congressmember Hakeem Jeffries and Yvette Clarke are working on some stuff to try to institute that which has already been on the books. So oftentimes in government, it's not that we don't write good laws or write good policy, it's the enforcement of those laws and policy. So we need to now enforce the tenets of the Community Reinvestment Act to make sure that we can get banks to underwrite good, solvent businesses that are present here in Bed-Stuy and all over the city. There's some great Black and immigrant-owned and women-owned businesses that deserve the resources to come back.
Yes. Yes, definitely
So,
agree with you on that.
so there's one part that says our community is going to support and patronize and get us back up and running. I'm not leaving it just to that, though. There are things on the book that can be helpful if we institute them, and my federal colleagues have committed to doing it. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
One of the other things I want to talk about, we're talking about Bed-Stuy and Northern Crown Heights. You're running for Brooklyn President. You're running to replace Eric Adams, who's our borough president here. Before you even tell me about running for Brooklyn President, explain to me exactly what is a borough president? What is their role for those that may not understand how our structure, our political system structure works here for Kings County?
So the borough president, let me just tell you what. So one of the things that the borough president doesn't have the capacity to do is write legislation and policy.
Okay.
Right? And so when I first decided that this was something I wanted to do, I had to understand that as a policy wonk, that's something I wouldn't be able to do from that role. However, it generally has the ability to use a large amount of capital funding to shape the borough. And the reason I'm running for that is because my former chairmanship was of small business, and my current chairmanship is of housing and buildings. This borough has demonstrated itself organically to be a hub for entrepreneurship and for development. So I believe that the person who sits at the helm of the third largest city, population-wise and size-wise, in the country should have the acumen in both of those places. It allows me to take over $60 million capital budget to help build and create affordable housing simultaneously while you're seeing the beautiful skyscrapers develop in downtown Brooklyn. But it helps me to shape the borough for everyone. So those of us who have branded Brooklyn as ours need someone who has institutional knowledge of the borough's past, a current working knowledge of the borough's present, and a vision for the borough's future. And that's what I have based on my 2 chairmanships and based on consistently working for affordable housing that has a balance. Working with responsible developers, because right now development is the devil if you ask most progressives, and you have to develop. You have to have more spaces that are available for people to live.
And I agree with you there. I definitely agree with you there. You have to develop. We're a growing nation for sure. I think I think the scare or the fear is that we lose our identity as Brooklynites, right? The overarching landscape of Brooklyn starts to change, and for the folks, it's out of reach for Brooklyn. Like for people who live here, the families, my family's Haitian, the immigrants that come here, Brooklyn starts to get out of reach for those who have built their families here when they think of development. I think that is 2 of the most common fears that I hear about. It's just out of reach as far as out of pricing, and it changes the fabric of what Brooklyn is.
So the funny thing is, it's a delicate balance, and what really drives up the price is less development, not more development. So that's a funny thing that people don't understand. It's economies of scale. So if there are less apartments, they're going to be more expensive. So expanding the landscape responsibly. So not making just really overly priced developments, but making sure the borough president gets to do that. The borough president gets to weigh in on developments that happen within the borough to make sure that they're consistent with keeping the flavor. So I'm one who loves the idea of going to different parts of Brooklyn to get what I want. I love the fact that I can go to Flatbush and I know I'm going to get the most serious oxtails ever created. I know I can go to Bushwick and I'm going to get arroz con dolos. I know that to me signifies why we're such a great place to be. And with that passion, this is how I'm going to continue to shape the borough to make sure that it doesn't get out of hand. My biggest fight as housing and buildings chair right now is to make sure that the integrity of communities is maintained. So while we're developing, so I will say, I was the first to be able to create affordable commercial, to work with developers to have a affordable commercial space. The reason that's important is because the first thing that's driven out, besides residential, is commercial. So the shops that we hold near and dear get pushed out because, you know, the lease cost is so astronomical on some of these developments. I've worked with at least 2 or 3 developers who have given me the opportunity to have, you know, in their large commercial footprint of developments, have given me 5, 6, 7,000 square foot at 1,000 square foot intervals for mom and pop shops to stay below market. So your favorite place where you want to get Haitian patties, right? Can stay, because we're now creating environments where what's conducive to particular communities get to stay because the planning is right.
The planning is right, exactly.
So that's, from a borough president's perspective, what you get to do. You get to work with the local leader to make sure that the resources are available, capital funding wise, to support projects that are conducive to, you know, building vibrant communities. I don't believe in segregation, but I do believe that we should have, you know, the same way the borough has always been, but there should be equity in there. So there's that little tweak too. Like, I don't want, you know, the Haitian community to be less in resources because they want to continue to respect their heritage in a way.
Absolutely.
So that's the delicate balance. And I don't, you know, these are the things that I think about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning about, from a borough president's perspective. How can I make sure that the integrity of communities that make up this borough are respected in this process? Because we all want development, we all want growth, we all want, you know, I lived all over the world. And if you said you were from Brooklyn, people had a different respect.
Oh yeah. I moved here to Brooklyn because of that very thing.
I want that. I want to keep that. So that's, you know, you have to have your finger on the pulse of what's important to communities, while simultaneously looking at ways. I'll give you a good example. When I work very close with the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. And when I first started working with them, they only had a downtown Brooklyn focus. And I said, man, there's so many commercial thoroughfares that are doing great business in smaller insulated communities. You have to have, you got to have down at the Brooklyn Chamber a section, you know, a Bed-Stuy section where you can go and find small businesses.
Right.
I was the first to have a shared economy weekend. My shared economy weekend was designed to marry the new emerging app-based economy to brick and mortar businesses. We were in a city at that time that said no to app-based businesses. So no to Airbnb, no to Uber, no to all of these app-based companies. And what I was finding was, in my community, the lion's share of drivers for Uber, Lyft, and everything were from Bed-Stuy.
Right.
There was a time when the lion's share of Airbnb and Airbnb-like hosts were in Bed-Stuy.
Bed-Stuy, yep.
Right, so I was tasked at finding a way to support them, because what they were doing was supplementing their income for these expensive mortgages, for escalating, and they were doing what we do, which is to find a way to get in where we fit in.
That's the Brooklyn hustle.
That's the Brooklyn hustle. So I was the first to say, wait a second, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Comptroller, these app-based businesses aren't the devil if we marry them to brick and mortar businesses. So my shared economy weekend, this is about the 5th year we're doing it. On Friday, we partner with the app-based transportation companies. So Uber, Lyft, City Bike, Zipcar, Bird scooters when they come on, Revel. And what they do is they do a 20% discount on Fridays. If you're coming from anywhere in the city to Bed-Stuy on Friday to bars, lounges, and restaurants on Friday, retail outlets on Saturday, and cultural institutions on Sunday.
Wow. What do you say to those? Voting is, I know how important voting is. Voting is so important to get our next borough president in that door. What do you say to those that have little to no faith in our political system, especially as we deal with this pandemic and see the lack of leadership from a federal perspective and feel as though that's the only type of government we should be paying attention to? What do you say to those?
I think that this is exactly the time when you should look at your needs not being met and your ability to make a difference with your vote. I think more than any other time is it blatantly obvious that people staying away from elections, which we have the tendency to do, has caused us to be less represented when we need to be represented. So I don't know if I gotta have more of an argument about why you should vote when you see the way that you're handled with the police, when you see the fact that your students of color, are the last to get tablets and laptops to be able to participate in the education system, so pushing them further behind. So all you have to do is look at whose leadership has fought for even the small progress that we made, because the truth of the matter is we've made progress, right? It's small and incremental, but we've made progress. And most people cannot say, and I can say that for this district, where we have a quarter of the registered Democratic voters voting every election. A quarter. There are places in the world that would die for an opportunity to have their voice heard through their, and are literally dying. There was a time in this country where we, men, women of color.
Exactly. Our ancestors have died at this very moment.
And I would just ask something that I heard. I'm going to steal it from a quote that I heard. If your vote wasn't so important, why would they keep trying to have you not have it? So you could say, oh, it don't mean nothing. That's what I'm hearing. Oh, it doesn't mean nothing. Every time, we don't get anything. If it wasn't so important, why would they keep trying to disenfranchise you from it? Listen, we're in the census too, Jolene, which is incredibly important as well. Every 10 years, we get an opportunity to be heard. Yeah, to be heard and to say who we are. And we run away from that. So we are, we keep two of the strongest opportunities we have, we keep giving that power to somebody else. So through the census, you can let people know that you're heard and make sure that you have the services that you need. I can't tell you how many times I get a call from a constituent who says, I was in another district and their streets are cleaner than ours. How do you think that happens? You think, that's because some of us have decided to give our vote to someone else, because that's what happens. Just be clear. When you don't vote,
you give the power to someone else.
Give the power to someone else. And
absolutely.
Then you can't necessarily complain about it if you haven't participated in the process. And most of the times I'm hearing from people who haven't participated in the process because they feel disenfranchised. So it's very secular. But I'm saying right now, when you look at where we stand federally, statewide, and local, when you look at the disproportionate way that resources are being allocated in our communities, we were the last to get PPEs on the front line. We were the last to get tested. So I don't know if you remember, there was a time when people were saying, oh, Black people can't get COVID.
Oh, that's how we started out the conversation. Don't get it twisted.
and I had to say, well, I don't think it's that we can't get it. I don't think we're being tested.
Right.
It was me and Eric who first started the conversation, like, yo, no, this ain't about our melanin keeping us immune from COVID. This is about them not even valuing us enough to have the testing that's available to us.
Right.
So again, we get a chance to pivot now. We right in election season. I remember when I was first running for office, I put on my little Easter suit and I went down to Borough Hall to talk to Marty Markowitz to see if I could get his support. And at that time, I had a friend who was working in Marty's office, and he suggested when I come down, he said he would, pave the way for me so I could sit down. I sat down with Marty Markowitz, had a great conversation. He said, wow, you're a very intelligent young man, which is code for something else that I won't get into this.
That's a whole nother conversation.
He was like, you're a very intelligent young man, you're engaging, you should be an asset to your community, you should run. And when I left, he turned to my friend, not knowing that was my friend, and he said, go get me the numbers of voters out of his district.
Oh, wow.
So Marty was like, maybe I could support the guy, but let me see how many people vote where he comes from. And the numbers were abysmal. And he was like, yeah, and he kind of like shuffled it off. Like, you know.
Doesn't matter.
No, it don't matter.
Don't matter.
He might be something someday, but he doesn't have the support of he will never have the full support of his community because they don't vote. And it's less about who the elected is, quite frankly. So everybody knows this. This shit ain't about Rob. It's about the community's ability to stand up on behalf of itself. I just carry your voice.
Right.
About me. And if they feel like your voice is weakened or depleted or defeated, then that's how they govern you. Now, because my predecessor was the Honorable, Dr. Albert Van,
mm-hmm.
I came in with a little bit of juice and a little bit of gravitas, quite frankly. And then I had my own presence and my own ability to articulate the needs of my community. So it kind of added to that. But, it doesn't happen like that all the time.
Absolutely.
If they judged us solely by the amount of folks that vote, we would be in a problem. And some of what we see is based on that. So it ain't even based on whether or not I'm fly enough to carry the message. It's based on whether or not they believe that there's enough political power collectively to make a difference. So when people say that they cater to other communities, those other communities vote in blocks.
Right.
5,000, 10,000. So they're very scared to run afoul of those communities.
Right.
And so the model has been set. I say we're very close to a June election. Just for the heck of it, let's go vote.
I won't hold you too long, but I've got to ask, through your personal experience with COVID, through the pandemic, through now trying to give shape and put your name in for borough president, what's the silver lining in all of this? What do you see? Is there a silver lining? And if so, what is that silver lining in all of this?
There's definitely a silver lining. Those of us who were left to make a difference, and that's everybody, you can absolutely make a difference from wherever you are, right? You don't have to, so I always tell people that leadership starts from where you stand, right? So you don't have to be the city council member to have leadership. People have demonstrated a tremendous amount of leadership that I'm so proud of, especially in Bed-Stuy.
Mm-hmm.
Before I ever gave out my first bag of food, there were block associations that were organizing to make sure that the seniors on their block were getting wellness checks, which included sometimes food, which included sometimes, whatever it may be.
Right. Running errands for them, the whole 9 yards. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be brutally honest. I didn't jump out and start giving out food. What happened was I said, wait, you can't do it like that because you could transmit the virus. So let's find a coordinated effort. But this community was already looking out for its own. And I just helped shape it in a way that was consistent with what the mandates for transmission were.
Right.
Because those blocks that were willing to go door to door were doing it, that was unmasked. It was like, we didn't really know at that point. And I was
right. I was participating with Bed-Stuy Strong. So I was out there.
I was like, hold on, everybody. Just hold on for a second. Let's get more information. Let's do a coordinated effort. And the first thing I did was have people, healthcare workers, first responders, come to the office and pick up food for people that they knew who needed it. I was getting in when my community had already said, yo, we off to the races, right. which was a little bit of the problem. So I'm proud of that. So the silver lining to me is that a lot of leadership and compassion and empathy evidenced itself during this virus. So I could lay in my bed sick because my community was doing its damn thing to make sure, and they didn't ask for permission. which wasn't great because of the way that it was spread. But they was like, yo, they saw a need. That to me warmed my heart that they saw a need. Silver lining is that they saw a need and got busy.
Yeah, we showed up.
Yeah, they showed and are still showing up.
Yeah,
there are still entities in my district, in the district over, in ancillary districts, who are not waiting for their council member. They're not waiting for the federal government. They're doing what they can do. There are all kinds of collectives being formed that have been formed and that are being formed as we speak to do the work on the ground. Some people are going, oh shoot, we do have a council member. That's right. Let me see what he said. But they're already getting busy. Whether it's churches, whether it's block associations, whether it's tenant associations. I've never seen they didn't come together that strongly in 9/11. They didn't come together that strongly. This pandemic has shown me and demonstrated that people can galvanize when necessary on behalf of their neighbors and their family and their friends. I just would love to see them do that voting wise. But for me, the silver lining was while I was sick and incapacitated to some degree, I didn't really have to worry about whether or not people were being taken care of, because it was evidence to me from the start that people weren't going to sit by and watch their neighbor go without food or watch their neighbor not have a wellness check. And for me, just the silver lining, I just got to reiterate, is the way this community stood up for each other in a pandemic. And I saw that in Bay Ridge, and I saw it in Canarsie, and I saw it in Coney Island. I know the governor gets on and he's taking a lot of credit for doing a lot of stuff, but Brooklyn kind of held his own. And when it's all said and done, the way that we behaved in Brooklyn, even crossing districts, was phenomenal.
That's good. That's good to know. That's good to know. Robert, thank you for your time. Thank you for your time. I am so happy you are healed, that you are healing. So good to hear that your family is well. And you know, I'm here. I'm here if you ever need me. But thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you, Josie.